education actually begins in Louisiana. When I started first grade, I lived in a little town called Rayville. It's near Monroe. And I remember so vividly those few weeks that I was there before we moved. And I remember two things especially in this huge, what seemed to me, this huge building in a class that must have had 40 or 50 kids in it. I remember the teacher way up in the front of the classroom, and she said, "Do exactly what I do." And she would write a word, a single syllable word on the chalkboard, and we were supposed to write it in our notepads, and I diligently did that. And then she would erase it and write another one, and then continue with that. I erased every one of mine and wore a hole in my paper. And I was so embarrassed when she finally caught that, and I realized that's not the way you're supposed to be doing this. And it's funny how things like that stick in your head. I think I must have been very compliant, and that wore off pretty quickly apparently. But I was clearly compliant at that point, and I think I must have also been a bit devious. I remember a second thing, and that is getting into a fight on the school bus. The big kids sort of egged us on. You know how they do that. And I complied with it. We cracked a window in the school bus, and I remember feeling really proud right at that moment and feeling terribly guilty for years and years afterwards. You know, kids, depending on who they are and what's in the training they have, the background that they have really forms their character. And kids learn to be bullies early, or they learn to think, you know, I don't want to be like that. Good teachers play such a dynamic, powerful role in the lives of children. It isn't just teaching children to read or understand math or the other things. It's being a parent many times. It's being a counselor. It's being a social worker. It's being all of those things that our kids need to be. And I want to use that sort of as a launching pad as just for introducing myself as far as all those nice things. Does my work touch the lives of children? And if it doesn't, I think I'm wasting my time. Now, I know as a researcher that I'm more like a color commentator on the sidelines. I'm not on the playing field. I'm talking about it, writing about it, discussing what you do. What you do on that playing field has such an important, powerful, dynamic impact. You change children's lives. Now, I was talking with Lori and Jenny a few minutes ago and a little bit last night about how did the first day go, how did things go. And they shared with me that you had some questions about sort of big picture, how all this fits together. Let me give you a big picture frame that I always begin with. And that is, yes, we're developing a new performance evaluation system for teachers and leaders in Louisiana. It has the potential to make a huge difference. And we'll talk some more about that. But the really big picture that we need to focus on is that does this touch children's lives? If kids aren't better at the end of the day for this new system, we've wasted our time. Everything we do should be monitored by that very metric. Leslie yesterday made a presentation on the qualities of effective teachers. That's what we're really talking about. We may indeed be changing the forms and the approach and some of the philosophy. We may be embedding student performance measures in teacher effectiveness and in principal effectiveness. But that's always been our business anyway. I teach graduate students at William & Mary. I teach master's and doctoral students in administration. And I tell our new administration students that there are only two reasons why you're going to have a job. One, other than safety. One is teaching and learning, and two is supporting teaching and learning. And it's that simple. We're here today about teaching and learning. And if you can have that frame of reference in your mind, and when you go back and train and work with your colleagues, that can and should be the guiding light for everything that we do. We're going to be working with you and visiting some of your schools and follow-up, and we're going to be monitoring and tracking and working very closely with the Department of Education team throughout this project, in this partnership. We want it to work. We want this to be successful. But always, always keep in mind what your true measure of success is. And I think that's the best way to have the big picture in mind. Everything else is simply procedural. Everything underneath that is simply how we do our work. And those how-tos are very important. We need to get them right. But they are underneath the big picture. Now, as we think about the how-tos and getting them right, it really is consequential. If we do this well, you have the opportunity to help transform your school. Evaluation, let me just be very direct. Evaluation is not going to balance your checkbook. It's not going to make Johnny behave. It's not going to solve all the ills in society. But what I can assure you is that if you don't have a quality performance evaluation system in place, you don't have reform and improvement in your school. It has become absolutely clear in studies in the U.S. and even evidence from across the world, you cannot have quality reform and change in your school without quality performance evaluation. And the reason is because everything flows through a teacher or a principal. And if you can reform your curriculum all day long, you can articulate, make it vertically and horizontally desirable and articulated. But if you put that curriculum in the hands of the wrong people, it ain't going to work. You can have muffins for moms and donuts for dads and say we've had community and parent involvement. It ain't going to work unless you have the right people in the classroom. There's a very simple method for improving every single school in Louisiana, even that little one in Rayville where I was. And that is, if we put good teachers in front of children every day for 13 straight years, you will transform this state. We will transform America. That is the way we do our work. You can't, and the reason why evaluation plays a big part in this picture, it's because, number one, you don't have reform unless you have good people implementing the reform. That has become absolutely central to our understanding of effective schooling. You start with good people. You can put good people in old buildings and still get good results. You can put inferior people in brand new buildings and kids don't learn. You must have the best teachers. And here's where evaluation comes to play a role in this. If you don't know who's doing good work, you don't know if you're having reform. If you don't evaluate, if your evaluation system is flawed, there's no way for you to possibly determine if the right people are doing the right things. We let people on the bus and let them ride for 30 years. We put them on a 28-year improvement plan. That's not the solution. Now, this evaluation system is not about throwing people off the bus. Honestly, though, there are a few people who need to get off at the next stop. This is about growing and improving and supporting the quality work that teachers do. It's about improvement. It's about helping people, not getting people. But it is about making certain and certifying that we're getting good results. There are two hallmarks to any profession. Now again, I'm talking background for a moment. I'm going to the rubric momentarily. But there are two hallmarks to any profession. One is that we must have a specialized body of knowledge, and you and I own that. People can't walk in off the street and do what a teacher or an administrator does, Melissa. If they think they can, just because they've been in school for a few years, let them come in and take your place for a week or so and see what it feels like. I mean, they'll bail out. I told you it's been a long time since I've had a real job. My wife, Terry, taught elementary grades for a number of years, and when I wanted a dose of reality, I'd go visit her classroom. But I realized about 30 minutes at a time is all I wanted. Little dab will do you. I was ready to bail out of there. Let somebody come in and try to take the place of a teacher. This is rocket science. Repeat after me 100 times. Teaching is rocket science. And it really, really is. We own a profession.